Hello, welcome to the training webinar for this week. I am Dale Franks, and today we are going to talk about custom tasks. Now, we're not going to actually go through all the configuration for custom tasks or for any specific custom tasks. We're more discussing the Platonic ideal of custom tasks. So we're going to do an overview of the custom tasks, how they're implemented, and what the different custom tasks are, and some special considerations for using custom tasks. So this is more like a custom tasks overall refresher course than it will be a guide on how to build any specific custom tasks. Having said that, I think there's going to be a lot of useful information in here about custom tasks and their use. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get into it. By the way, I don't mention this much anymore, but at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button, which if you click on it will enable you to ask a question. I will get a notification and will thus be able to answer your question whenever you type it in, and I'll try to keep an eye on my own Zoom toolbar so that I can see that you've asked a question so that I can answer it as it comes up. In general, all of the custom tasks are in one of what we call the system folders. So on the content list, right now I'm not showing any of my system folders. I generally keep them turned off because they take up a lot of room in the content list, and I'd prefer to save the room. But there is the toggle system folders button, and when I click it, it opens up all of the system folders. Now, what we consider a system folder is a folder whose name is enclosed in square brackets. That's just the UI convention that we came up with. And so if you place any folder name inside square brackets, it will be treated as a system object. I should point out that that not only works here at the root level of the partition, but anywhere that you create a folder inside square brackets, that folder will disappear if you toggle system folders off. So just be aware that if you are going to use this convention outside of the root level of the partition, that it's also going to hide it everywhere else it encounters it whenever you turn off system folders. And that is the intended behavior. So just something to keep in mind. All custom tasks should be stored at the root level of the partition in a custom tasks folder. Now, we provide routine download for the custom tasks from the support website. In fact, let me just go ahead and point that to you so that you can see it's right here on the downloads page. You just go to the downloads section, and then there's the process director downloads. You click on that, and you can scroll down and you can see the custom tasks. Now, it's important to note that the product itself and the custom tasks are not the same thing. Technically, the custom tasks are not part of the product, although, of course, we provide all of the standard custom tasks to you free, but they are not released in conjunction with the product. Well, not usually. There have been a couple of releases that we've made some change to the internal architecture, and which has also changed how some of the custom tasks have to be programmed. So sometimes whenever we have a new release, we also have to release a new version of the custom task. We had to do that last year about this time because we made a change, a fundamental database change, and some of the custom tasks would not work. So in those cases, you do need an updated version of the custom tasks. In general, however, custom tasks are not directly related to process director versions. Indeed, Each custom task has their own version number that you can tell how old your custom task is. So when you need the custom task, and you often do, and even though I'm not sure that's right, I may have missed updating a date on the support site for our custom tasks, because I'm pretty sure we've released something since 13 March 2025. So I may need to have to go back and check that out. Because I am the single point of failure for all of the information on this page. So it could just be me that I just forgot to update that date. But we do release new custom tasks on a not infrequent basis, I would put it. So it's always wise to come and check the custom tasks. And I guess you have to trust me that I know what I'm doing with the release dates, just to ensure that you have the most current version of the custom tasks. I have run across systems. I think I ran across a system last year where they hadn't updated their custom tasks since like 2019 or 2020. They were pretty far behind because, as time goes by, we might change the functionality of a custom task, or we find a bug in a custom task that has to be fixed. And we fix each of the custom tasks individually. So there's always a chance that there are new custom tasks or a new custom tasks package that you'll need to download. So you do need to check back in, every 6 months or so, just to be sure that you have the most recent version of the custom task. Now, there are some caveats to that. If you have an older version of Process Director, it does get a little iffy when you're trying to upload new custom tasks, especially across major versions, because the custom tasks that used to work with, say, version 5 might not work with version 6 because of some of the changes we've made. So that's also an indication that you should be keeping up with the product releases as well, and updating the product on I hesitate to say a regular basis, but you should probably on a once a year basis or so be upgrading your product as well, so that you have a more recent version of the product. All of the custom tasks are located, as I said, in the custom task folder that should be at the root of your application partition. The reason that it needs to be at the root is for import and export operations, because GUIDs, the actual unique identifiers for each object, those don't actually get transferred whenever you export, say, from dev and import into production. All of those GUIDs, all of those unique values are stripped out. And the only way that we can look up references to custom tasks is to find them in a specific folder location. We know what folder location they were on in the old system, your dev system. So when you import into a new system, because we don't have the GUIDs, whenever we look up an object that you might have linked to, the only way that we can do that is via the object name and its folder path. The reason why you need to have a consistent placement of your custom tasks on every system, and our recommendation is always to put it right at the root of the partition, is that whenever I'm importing and I'm looking for a custom task named, say, copy case, I am going to look at default partition / custom tasks / case. And I'm going to look, first of all, to see that this folder actually exists. And if it does, then I'm going to look inside it for an object called copy case. So I have to match the names and the folder paths. So it's very important that your custom tasks are stored in the exact same place on every server. That's also why we recommend that your business rules and your business values, the custom utilities, your data sources, we recommend that they also go in a folder at the root of your partition, and placing their names inside square brackets is not necessary per se. I do it simply so that they just won't show up whenever I hide the system folders with the toggle. But the same thing applies to all of these objects. The reason that they're here in these folders at the root of the partition is so that when I'm importing from another system, it knows where to look for my data sources or my drop-down content list objects. And of course, the template data and the template library, all of that needs to be at the root level. So you could put them somewhere else. We very strongly recommend that you do not. Now, as we just saw, they are all separated into folders. Each folder has a different topic of custom tasks. So there are tasks that are specific to Active Directory or specific to a form or specific to connecting to an external database, although you're going to have to be careful about these, but we'll get to that later. So they're all organized in these folders. Now, this folder organization is also replicated whenever you try to associate a custom task with, say, a form or process timeline. So if we go to the Custom Task Event Mapping tab, and we select a custom task, when the Choose Custom Task dialog box appears, it's going to have that same folder structure here that we saw in the content list. I probably should have kept these custom tasks open just long enough so that we could look and see that our folder structure is basically the same all the way across the UI in terms of how we select custom tasks. Now, there are some custom tasks that you are not going to be able to use. In fact, there are two that actually show up as standard that you can never use right out of the box. One is the MS Dynamics custom tasks, and the other are the Salesforce custom tasks. Oh, there is a third group, the OData custom tasks. These used to be fully functional in the product right out of the box until a company called CData acquired the connectors that make them work. And so sometime around 2017-ish or so, maybe it was even as early as 2016, whenever it was, CData decided that they would change the licensing structure for the OData connectors. And all three of these, Dynamics, the OData connector itself, and Salesforce, all use a database connection type called the OData connector. The OData connector that we have here is basically a generic OData connection. There are specific OData connections to Microsoft Dynamics and to Salesforce. All of those connectors have to be separately licensed, not by us. You have to go to the CData website and buy those connectors if you want to hook up to your MS Dynamics ERP system or your Salesforce CRM. I guess at some point CData noted that there are so many people that use Salesforce. Wouldn't it be great if we could force all of them to pay us money too, if they want to connect to Salesforce from any third-party system? And the only people who can give you a connector to like Salesforce, I believe, or MS Dynamics is through an OData connection, which means that CData is going to want your money to allow you to talk to the software you have purchased from anywhere outside that software. We will help you, by the way, if you need a OData license from CData, the company. It will require some setup. In fact, we do have some customers, cloud customers, who need those OData connectors. So they've purchased them from CData. They send them to us. We do the connector install. And once that license installation is done, then you can actually use these connectors. But they are separately licensed, not by BP Logix, but by the company that controls the IP now for the OData connection. That company, again, is named CData. They acquired those licenses and they control the licensing terms for those connectors. We do keep them in the product because we do have a fair number of customers that use either Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, and so they remain in the product. However, they're non-functional for all practical intents and purposes unless you buy a CData license. I have some custom tasks that you won't have, or you won't have them unless you have them as legacy. We used to have several social media custom tasks to do stuff with Twitter and Facebook. They changed over to an OAuth authentication scheme, and we asked around our customers. We had one customer that used them fairly extensively. That was the only customer that used them. So we have largely removed them from the product. So if you're a newer customer, you won't see any of the social media ones. If you're an older customer, you will. You should be advised that they are essentially non-functional at this point, which is why we've removed them from the custom tasks packages. I think if we got enough demand, we could pretty easily, because we now support OAuth for Microsoft and for Google. And these are all standard OAuth connectors, so that are required now anyway. And so implementation of them would not be a big deal, but not as many people use Facebook as used to, and Twitter isn't even called Twitter anymore. And the number of customers who want to use Process Director to either read or post in social media turns out to be pretty small. So if you do see these, just know that they're non-functional. And even though I have not done so here, if you want to delete the social media folder, you certainly can. It's not going to affect anything because I highly doubt that you're using them at all. One thing to note about custom tasks is that if there is a UI method to do something, you shouldn't use the custom tasks to do it. A prime example of this are all of the custom tasks that fall into the not form data mapping, database connectors. So there are a lot of custom tasks in here to enable you to do a lot of database operations. So there's advanced fill drop down from database. There is just fill drop down from database. There's fill fields from database, drop down object from business value. There's a whole bunch of these. Outside of maybe rule query from DB in some limited circumstances, and the SQL command custom task, which you absolutely positively still need, and maybe query to CSV because it just converts a query result to a CSV file that you can download real quick. Outside of that, most of these custom tasks are now not necessary. So for example, if you take, just as an example, we'll just preview the config for the advanced fill dropdown from database. Prior to the existence of business values, this was the only method that was available in the product to extract data from an external database to either fill values in a form or to, as this custom task does, to fill the options in a drop-down control. They have largely been deprecated by the existence of business values. Because with a business value, you can just go to the Set Form Data tab of a form definition, or the Fill Dropdowns tab of a form definition, and you can fill the dropdowns directly from a business value. Or you can set database fields directly from a business value. So you don't really need these custom tasks anymore. Now, we can't really take them out of the product because for many years, this was the primary way of accessing external data. So we can't really remove them from the product because it would break a bunch of existing stuff. So they're still there, but it's difficult to think of a case where you would use most of these anymore simply because business values exist. One of the drawbacks of custom tasks is that they are not reusable. So if I need to fill a dropdown from a database and I configure a custom task on a form to do it, great, that custom task now works on that form. If I have 10 forms that have the same dropdown that need to be filled from a database, that means that on each one of these forms, I now have to recreate and reconfigure that custom task. If I have 10 forms, I've got to do it 10 times. That is super tedious. Business values, on the other hand, are reusable everywhere in the product. So if I pull some database data from a business value, once I have it, I can use it in every single form that I create. I just call that same business value. It returns the same data to me. It's reusable over and over. Custom tasks aren't, which is one of the reasons why we created the business value in the first place, to eliminate the tedium of having to recreate this same custom task 10 times. Now, while that is true for the fill dropdowns or fill fields custom tasks, it is not true for the SQL command custom task. This custom task is still super important because this is the one custom task that you should use anytime that you want to do a delete, insert, or update statement on a database. For all of your select query needs, you have business values, and you can pull whatever data you want from a business value because all it does is read data. So I create one business value to read one set of data, and I use that everywhere that I want to use it. We strongly recommend that anytime that you want to run a insert, update, or delete statement in an external database, and I would really love to have this form actually compile and display so that we could actually see it. Anytime you want to do one of those operations on a database, you do need to use the finally available SQL command custom task. This is the only way that you should use to get data into a database or remove data from a database or update any existing data. This is intentional. We want you to individually create and, if necessary, recreate all of those SQL commands that actually change the data in an existing data source. So this you're going to use quite a lot if you do database operations. And this is still a highly relevant custom task. Now let me tell you a secret. I'm going to tell you a secret, and you should forget that I ever mentioned it as soon as I stop talking. If we look at a business value, and we'll just pull one up at random here. It doesn't really matter which one it is, although it does matter if it won't open it. There we go, finally opened. Now, this is a SQL business value, not a very impressive one. It just brings out everything from my sample companies table, which I think is a 1,000 record table. Okay, great. Let's test the query. It should return a whole bunch of records, and there it does. It'll return 100 of the 1,000 records that are in the database. Okay, this is all well and good, but here's the thing. We're not going to vet this SQL statement or any SQL statement that you place into a business value. That's the job of SQL Server, or for maybe a couple of you, Oracle on the back end. Whatever this says, we are going to send to SQL Server. And if it's a valid SQL command, SQL Server is going to run it. Now, on the one hand, that's good because all of the validation is done on SQL Server. SQL Server will determine if the syntax is valid. If it is, it will run your command. It's also good in the sense that, this is about the simplest SQL command that we can give. But SQL commands can get a lot more complex than this. You might want to run a stored procedure. In fact, might need to run a stored procedure because you have a large number of variables that need to be passed in, say from a form via a parameter. So you need to be able to parse all of those inputs. You need to be able to create SQL variables to set the value of those inputs to the form data that is mapped to your parameters. Then you need to send all of those parameters to a very complex SQL statement, maybe a nested SQL statement that does several database operations all at one time. And somehow at the end of it, you get back a nice single standard set of data that matches all of the functions that you placed in your stored procedure. So you can actually do very complex stuff here. And one of the complex things you can do is you can change the word select to the word delete. And that's a valid SQL statement. And if I hit test query right here, which I am going to do everything I can not to do. In fact, I'm going to Control Z my way out of that delete just in case I do mess things up. If I put a delete command there, or an insert command, or an update command, it will run. Not only will it run every time an end user invokes that business value. So if you have that business value on a form and an end user invokes it, it will delete the data. By placing an update, insert, or delete statement in a business value, you are giving every user who might possibly access that business value, even indirectly, via making a change to a form or via some value coming up as true inside a process timeline. Anything that invokes that business value is going to run that SQL statement. Process Director does not vet your SQL statements. Well, I guess in .500, that's not entirely true because we've put the Monaco editor in here, and the Monaco editor will do, formatting and other things, and it will look over your text. And if there are obvious SQL errors, it will tell you in the UI, and will show you syntax errors. For example, if I take the S out of sample companies, what's the deal here? Table sample company does not exist in the selected database. So it is data aware. It knows what your database schema is over here on the right-hand side. So it knows what all of your tables are. And if you put in the wrong table name, it won't know what you're looking at, and it'll show you the error that we just saw. Plus, it helps you write. It has IntelliSense. So in that sense, on the front end, the editor itself helps you with your SQL statement to see that it's valid syntactically. But other than that, and of course, previous versions didn't have this. It was just a plain old text box. We didn't check anything. So outside of the syntax checking that happens with the Monaco editor now for business values, we're going to send that SQL as is to your database, and your database is going to do whatever it does with it. So Only select operations should be performed by a business value. SQL command is for all of your other there's a term that we use in the tech world. It's called CRUD, which stands for change, read, update, delete, basically CRUD. So basically, every R operation, every read operation should be done via a business value. Every cud operation, so if like a cow, you're chewing your cud, which is to change, update, or delete, that all needs to be done through the SQL command custom task. Custom tasks are invoked slightly differently depending on whether you invoke them in a form or a process timeline. So I think at this point we can now toggle our system folders, and let's go and take a look at our form and process timeline. So most custom tasks can be invoked from either a form or a process timeline. That is not universally true. There are a couple of tasks that just only work in a timeline. There are a couple of tasks that only work in a form, like the show alert custom task. Show alert custom task has to run from a form because it's all JavaScript, so it has to exist in your browser with the appropriate scripting so that if you say click on a button and it flashes the alert box, it's a JavaScript alert box. All right, that only works in a form. You just can't do that in a process timeline. So the custom tasks that you see either here, whenever you select a custom task from the custom task event mapping tab, or the custom tasks that you see on a process timeline. So if we go here to our process timeline, I have a custom task activity already set up. So if I go to the custom task tab and I open it up, now I am going to see the same folders, but I'm not always going to see the same items inside the folder that I would see on a form. So for example, in a process timeline, if I go to the form setup or form data mapping, I'm going to have a much more limited set of custom tasks that I could invoke. And notice that nowhere here does the show alert or advanced show alert custom task appear. Those custom tasks only work on a form. Now, there are some custom tasks that only work on a process timeline. Those custom tasks will show up here, but they won't show up on the form. There is one major difference to the context that a custom task assumes whenever you invoke it. So since we're here, let's just pull a, it doesn't matter what one we pull. Let's just do a PDF one. Those work either way. So we'll do a convert to PDF custom task. We'll add that custom task there. Now, at the top in a process timeline, I'm always going to get the set container form property. That says optional, but that's not exactly true. You should set the container form. Basically, if I'm going to do anything, and this is why we have optional here, if I'm not going to do anything that is form-based, I'm going to do something outside of that. Like I'm going to select the launch process custom task. It often doesn't matter what the container form is. I don't have to set anything. But if I'm doing a copy form data or almost any other form-based custom task, I'm going to need to specify the container form, which is to say the source form from which any data will be taken. For example, if I were to do the, instead of doing convert to PDF, right? Let's pick one where I do actually need it. So we'll go to form data mapping, copy form data. So I'm going to copy data from one form to another. Well, the data from which I am going to copy does need to be specified in the set container form. In fact, if you open up the custom task in this particular context, and again, it's one that has to be set up, I have a mapping tab here, right? But what is my form control? What is my source form control? Well, I don't know because I haven't set up a form to create, so that's not going to work, but good, I can do that here. What I can't do is configure the container form for my source form control. That is simply not going to show me anything at all until I go up here to my set container form and I pick the form, which is going to be the container form for my data. And then I can now hit the configure, and it's still not going to work because there are no fields on that form. But at least it's looking for fields. It knows that fields exist. So it's looking for the same field. Well, it could be the same field as destination. That's the only option I have here because there are no other form fields. But this dropdown just simply doesn't work until I identify the form context. That is something that you don't have to do whenever you're setting up a form custom task. Because on the custom task event mapping, if I just say, okay, well, let's go back here. Let's go to form data mapping. Oh, and look, I have extra stuff like manipulate array data or fill fields from business value. But we're looking at copy form data right now. We'll add that custom task. And note, I don't have to identify a source form. This custom task is already on this form, the CT sample form. So we're going to assume that CT sample form is the source form for the custom task. So in a process timeline, you often have to set up and always should set up what your container form is, though technically, because it's not always necessary, it's technically an optional property. You shouldn't treat it like one in most cases. In most cases, you should set the container form, which is generally the default form for the process timeline. But on a form, I don't have to do that. I can go straight into the configuration for the custom task. And if I go to add mapping, it's going to want to see those fields on the form. And I don't have any, but if I did, they would show up in that dropdown. By the way, since we have one open, let's go ahead and look down here at the very bottom. Remember, I was talking about version numbers. Now, for Process Director, the version number is, it's not an arbitrary number, but it is an internally generated number. And it used to be a 2-octet number. Now it's 3 octets, which is to say there are 3 sets of numbers. So 6.1.501. That's the current release. That's not how custom task works. We do versioning on the custom task by the date that the custom task was last updated. So in this case, the custom task version is 2022.03.24. So that tells us that this custom task was last updated on the 24th of April in 2022. So sometimes in a tech support ticket, I'll ask, what version of the custom task are you on? Because you may be describing something that I know to have been fixed. A lot of times customers will come back, well, we're on 6.1.313. Not what I'm asking. I need that number right there because that tells me whether you are on the most recent custom task version. Every single custom task has its own version number, basically, which is the date time group for when it was edited. So if I ask you for the custom task version in a tech support ticket, or if Felipe or Eduardo or Francis or Anita ask you, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that specific custom task version number, which is always right below the buttons on the custom task at the bottom of the screen. Oh, okay. I guess I don't want to move here. Because we have the ability to run custom tasks in these two places, most of them anyway, the question then becomes, all right, so how do I pick where I want to run the custom task from? Should I always run them from the form, or should I always run them from the process timeline, or some mix of the two? And the answer is some mix of the two. If you're trying to do something that is not directly related to the process itself, so I want to change value on a form or something like that, then I'm going to want to run it from the form. It's not always true. And like I said, there are some that just can't be run from a form. But for the most part, if it's not directly process related, you'll run it from the form. Certainly anything that requires user input or a user action like a button click to invoke, definitely that needs to go on the form. If it is directly related to the process or affects how the process works, then you want to run that from the process itself. But there's a lot of gray area here. And copy form data, which I guess I'm lucky I picked it, that's one of the tricky ones. There are actually two tricky ones, but one is the set form data. I have talked across many webinars about set form data and how you shouldn't usually use it, certainly not on a form. You shouldn't. You should use the set form data tab. But I do use it in a process timeline. I create a custom task that calls the set form data. I create a custom task activity that calls the set form data custom task and explicitly sets the request number for a form. That's all the discussion we'll need for that. I've talked about that all the time. But copy form data is tricky. If you are invoking a launch process or run process, well, I guess it wouldn't be a run process timeline activity, a process timeline activity. And you're going to start a sub process of some sort. And you want to be able to copy data from this parent form to a child form that's going to get created as the default form for the sub process. Then you would run copy form data. Let's save, actually, rather than just switch back and forth. Then you'd run the copy form data in your sub process as a custom task activity. I didn't save it, obviously. So let me go back and reconfigure it real fast. And we should set this container form to our CT sample form. And let me just do a quick update so that I've saved everything and we can go back. So normally what you would do when you invoked your sub process, if you wanted to copy data from the parent form to a child form, is you would invoke copy form data right from the get-go as the very first timeline activity on the sub process. So before anything starts, before any user activities are assigned or anything like that, you would do a copy form data on your sub process. When you invoke the sub process via a process activity, it automatically, or at least by default, you can change the behavior, but by default, when the sub process is created, the form for your parent process, so for in this example, our CT sample form, that form instance will get copied down to the sub process. And now it exists in the sub process as a process attachment. Great. Now that I have it, then in the sub process as my very first activity, I can call copy form data, and I can set the parent form as my container form. And then whatever my child form is, I can go in here and do the add mapping to map the data on the child form to the data on the source form. I would generally do that in that way. I think probably most of the time, if you're doing copy form data, you're kind of doing it in that context where you're kind of switching processes. And so you want to copy that data to run in a different process. I think so that generally then copy form data gets called from the child process as a timeline activity. But that's not universally true because there are a lot of other circumstances in which you might need to copy form data. So, for example, on a form, all right, let's just practice okaying our way out of these things instead of trying to do a quick switch. There's a lot of times whenever you need to copy form data as part of a single process. For example, I have a secondary form, and I'm going to run that secondary form in some activities and the default form in others. And at some point, I'm going to need to have the data from my parent form copied down to my child form. So it's not uncommon to see copy form data used in that context. I would argue in most cases it doesn't need to be used in that context, but because form field synchronization exists. So let's take a look at form field synchronization and copy form data. I did not mean to make this a copy form data webinar, but that's what it's turning into. We'll go into the edit tab. I guess I should have just gone there initially rather than closing it out, and we'll drop just a couple of form fields on here for good measure. And we'll go ahead and save it. Actually, I could have done it right from here. Well, now that we're saving and closing it, I guess I'll do it from the Form Controls tab. So I have these two boxes here, and they each have field properties. Now, one of the field properties for a form field is the synchronize field within process. Do I use copy form data, or do I use field synchronization? Now, field synchronization is actually pretty cool. So, for example, and I'll show you how this works, and then we'll talk about the copy form data custom task. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close and save this form. And I'm going to make a quick copy of it. And we'll copy it here. And we'll call this CT sample form 2. And we'll save it. Now let's say I have a timeline, and depending on where I am in the timeline and what's running and who's looking on it, different people are going to see a different form. Some people are going to see the sample form, and some people are going to see sample form 2. Now, I want to ensure that my data is the same across both forms. So one of the ways I would do that is with copy form data CT. I would just copy the data from sample form and just copy it over to sample form 2, which is really useful if I want to copy everything because I can just copy everything. Now, in my case, because I copied the form, all of my field names are going to be the same on both forms. That's going to enable me to do a cool thing here with this custom task, or without using the custom task. So if I open up CT sample form, which is form 1 in this case, and let's say I want whatever the value is in this field on this form, I want this value to be automatically synchronized with every other form that I'm going to use in this process. So all I need to do is click that button right there and hit OK. So now, whenever I run this form and I put a value in input 1 as a user, then when form 2 is invoked, whenever that may be, and it gets attached to the process director is automatically going to take the value on this form and is going to put it into a field named input 1 on the second form. So if I go to sample form 2, what I would most likely do on sample form 2, because input 1 is now problematic, the value for input 1 is now chained to the first form, CT sample form. The input 1 on that form is what's going to determine what goes into input 1 on this form. What I'm probably going to want to do is I'm probably going to want to make input 1 on this form. I'm probably going to want to set it to disabled. Because with field synchronization, if someone opens this form and they can edit input 1 and they decide to edit it, well, knock yourself out. Edit it as much as you want, because whatever you put into input 1 is now going to be overwritten by the value of input 1 on form 1. So it doesn't matter what I put into form 2 here. It's going to get overwritten by form 1 because form 1 is the parent field. It's the one field that controls the synchronization. Oh, by the way, only check that synchronize field checkbox on one field and not on any of the other fields. If I'm in form 2 and I click the button on form 2 as well, then I'm going to be overriding both forms back and forth. Maybe not always reliably, depending on when the two instances get saved. Synchronization should work basically one way, from the parent to the child. This will actually work, but you're going to see some data on form 1 or form 2 that you don't expect. But technically you could do this, but I wouldn't. I would just set this field as, I would just set the field on form 2 for input 1 as disabled, which I already have. So that way it always gets its value from form 1. Now I can do the opposite. I'm in form 2, right? So on form 2, I can synchronize form 2. This is now my master field on form 2. That's great. I think what I'll probably want to do now, again, back here on my sample form, is go to input 2 and set it as disabled. And there we go. So I can synchronize now across forms. I can synchronize back and forth. If I got 5 forms, I can have different synchronization fields on each form. As long as the field names are the same, those fields will synchronize anywhere in the process. Now, obviously, all of those forms would have to be part of the process. Now, that's pretty cool. And it does replicate in some ways what the CT does. It is a bit more locked down, however, because I can only take synchronization from one field on one form with that name, and it gets synchronized to all the other forms. Copy form data doesn't work like that. With copy form data, it's going to copy the data that you say when you say to do it, and it's going to copy it from form A to form B. Once it gets to form B, that data is now fully editable. So it is possible for there to be a delta to emerge between the data on form A and form B, because all the copy form data does is just copy data over. So there are some times when, rather than using the copy form data CT, you shouldn't use it. Actually, you should use field synchronization because it gives you a much tighter, much more strict, and much more reliable method of synchronizing data and keeping the data the same across multiple forms in a process. Copy form data doesn't do that. It just copies data as is at a given point in time. Then it forgets those forms ever exist, never gets called again, and whatever happens to the data happens. So there are some things in Process Director. This is one of those examples I was talking about. If I can do it through the UI, which I definitely can here by using field synchronization, then I should do it through the UI. I shouldn't do it via a custom task. Now, there are many circumstances where I just do want to copy the data, and I only want to copy it discretely at one specific point in time, and what happens after that just happens. That's a circumstance where this is not going to work very well because it is too constrained and it does too tight a series of operations, and I need to be a little more loosey-goosey than that. So then I would not use synchronized field within process. Then I would use the CT so that I could just do a quick copy. But I might do that here or in the form, or I might do that custom task here in the process timeline. There are some other tricky custom tasks about when they would get invoked. One is the set metadata custom task. Set metadata works both in the form and in the process timeline, and it enables you to apply metadata to different objects. This is one of those weird ones that, if I can find custom tasks, this is one of those weird ones that it kind of doesn't matter where you use it. And most often, the one that you'll use would be the set metadata custom task. And, I've got an entire webinar on metadata. But for the set metadata custom task, I can set any metadata pretty much on any object in the system. So it doesn't matter where I call it because I can have it set metadata to a form or a process timeline reference. So not only the form, but like document attachments, anything like that. I can apply it only to documents or only to forms. And I can map the data from a form field. I didn't configure a container form here, but I can just, and I'm not actually calling it from anywhere. This is just a preview. So if I know what my container form is, I can take the category picker and the attribute picker controls. I can take their values and use it to set metadata. It's a weird one. It doesn't much matter whether I do it in the custom task or whether I do it in the form, because no matter where I do it, I have universal access to all of the objects. There are a couple of custom tasks like this. Set metadata is one. Item actions. So if we go up here to content actions, there we go. Item actions is another one that it doesn't really matter where you call it from, because no matter where you call it from, I think I probably want to go back to the properties tab there. No matter where you call it from, you have access to doing any change to content list items that you want to change. You can change permissions. You can make copies of them. You can delete them. You can move them between folders. Again, if you see this kind of setup at the top, where I can choose what references I want, whether it's form, timeline, or workflow, whether I can pick all object types, documents, or forms, limit items to a specific group, you're looking at a very powerful custom task, which largely can be called anywhere that you want to call it. I don't even have any best practices advice for you on determining when and where to call a custom task because it can be so complex. There are some sort of rules of thumb that you might want to keep in mind. If the custom task is ever going to be called from a user action, then it's got to be on the form. You don't really have a choice. So even if it's something like, item actions, which can run from anywhere, if it's going to be invoked by a user activity, it's got to go on the form. That implies that if it doesn't need to be invoked by a user activity, you should throw it on the process timeline. That's not entirely true, but that is one good guideline. If a user has to do something for it to happen, it should happen on the form, and it should happen when the user does the thing. There are some edge cases, right? So let's say that I have a custom task that I only want to run if form field A has a specific value. Well, that gives me some choices of how I want to invoke that. At least in terms of the timing. So let's say I am in activity 1 and my first reviewer is looking at a form. They're the very first user activity. Activity 1, they have the form open and they change the value of field A to the value that invokes the custom task whenever it's evaluated. Now your choice becomes, when do I want to evaluate it? Because I could take field A and I could run field A as an event field. And as soon as they change the value, I can run the event field. And then on the form, I can have the custom task set up with a condition that it should run if field A equals yes. And then it would run. And it would run on the form as soon as the first approver who's working in activity 1, as soon as he changes that value to yes and exits the field, then the custom task gets invoked and the thing that you want the custom task to do happens. Do you want it to work that way? Let's say it's a custom task like convert to PDF. Well, we use convert to PDF a lot. A lot of people use it too. It is probably the most used custom task, but it does have a drawback. If I got large documents, lots of pictures, stuff like that, a bunch of document attachments, it may take a long time for this custom task to run. So what that means is, from a user perspective, if I have a convert to PDF happening on a form event, the user is locked out of doing anything while that event is running, because that run PD or that convert to PDF custom task is now going to take 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds because you have 500 documents that you want to convert. That PDF conversion is going to take a while. And that means that as soon as your user types yes in field A and exits field A, he's now stuck. He's going to sit there and watch the spinny for as long as he needs to watch it until that custom task completes whatever the PDF conversion is. And it goes through, all of these steps and applies all of these properties, including having to output it to a single PDF and figuring out what they are, and then sorting the items alphabetically and grouping the forms at the front and all the document attachments at the back. There's a lot of stuff going on here. So yes, I do want this convert to PDF to happen as soon as the value of field A is yes, but do I want it to happen for the user? Maybe not. So in that case, rather than running it on the form, I think I would run that on the process timeline. So after activity activity 1 is complete and my user hits approve or whatever it is that they hit, then the next activity that happens would be a custom task activity, and it would have in this case, it would have a needed when condition. I suppose I should go back to the timeline at this point. So let me create another activity. We'll call this one activity 1, and we'll call this one activity 2. So we're going to change the names here, and we are going to move activity. We'll move activity 2 down here. Didn't mean to move it there. I didn't mean to make it a parent. I just meant to move it. Well, I have messed it up now. I don't want it moved under a parent. So let me go to active. Well, okay, fine. We'll just pretend that it is not a child activity. We'll just pretend that it's dependent on each other. And activity 1 is a user activity. I'll just say it takes 3 days, and participant should be me. So we'll go ahead and we'll close that. All right, so fine. Now I have activity 1 and activity 2. Activity 2 actually okay, we'll pretend that I've messed it all up. I have to restart, and we'll just pretend that activity 2 is dependent on activity 1. So what I would do is on activity 2 is that's where I'd run my convert to PDF. Is the user still going to see the spinny? Technically, yes, when the PDF conversion happens, but he is going to see the spinny after he clicks, approve, and he's done with the form. And what he's waiting for is the form to close. It is one of those weird little things in Process Director where the form will stay open while the convert to PDF activity is occurring, and the form won't actually close until the convert to PDF activity is done, which is kind of a pain, although there are a couple of ways around it. I think there is, that is copy form data, not convert to PDF. So let me give you a little trick here if I can pull this off. PDF custom tasks, convert to PDF, add to custom task, sample form is still our CT. I don't have to reset that. We can go to the convert to PDF and thought there was a option, and I haven't used it for a while, but I thought there was an option to make this happen asynchronously. I'm sure there is, but I don't remember how to invoke it. But there is a perform in the background kind of setting. I just don't remember what it is, but it would actually just do the PDF conversion in the background, and it would not run. You could also call the run process custom task. That's one way of doing it. You could just call a run. So now we're getting into little tips and tricks. So PDF conversion is problematic for the length of time it may take to do the PDF conversion. And it's always going to end up showing the user the spinny. If we don't want to show the user the spinny, there are ways to use custom tasks to get around that. Indeed, there are ways to use the custom tasks to do little discrete notifications as well. One of the things you can do, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to remove that activity, that custom task activity. And I have removed everything. So we'll create that activity. We'll create another one. We will now set the correct dependency, or will we? There we go. We'll set the correct dependency and we'll set activity. What did I do? Did I just move them? Yeah, I moved him. I didn't set the dependency. I ain't the best at dragging and dropping, apparently. Let's go back over here to activity 2, which it is now called. And we're going to chain some things here. So what I would do if I wanted stuff to happen in the background, like the convert to PDF, I would chain this in this way. I'm going to need, for this activity here, I didn't change it, I'm going to need it to be a custom task activity. And I'm going to need to call a run process custom task. So we'll go to process, there it is, process, and we'll go to run process, and we'll add that custom task here. And we'll set our container form as our CT sample form, just to do everything right. We're not going to configure this yet because we don't have anything to configure. So when you're using PDF custom tasks, and you don't want to have your user sitting there for 30 seconds looking at a spinny, or maybe even longer. We've had some pretty long cycle time. We have some customers that, we have at least one customer that creates these documents that they're Word documents, and they also upload these large and very memory intensive TIFF files. And the TIFF image format is an uncompressed image format, so the files tend to be large. Then they call a convert to PDF, and that convert to PDF can take, a minute to get done. Because of the way the convert to PDF runs, whether I run it on the form or whether I run it in the process timeline, if I run it immediately after a user activity, then that user activity, that form is not going to close. It's just going to keep spinning. Now, I can try to run something between the two activities to break the chain, but that just gets ugly and doesn't work very well. So for those custom tasks that take a lot of time to run, the best way is to divorce them from the process entirely, which is why we are calling a run process custom task. Because what I would do in this case is save my process timeline before I did anything. So let's give it a second to save. Now I'm going to create a new process timeline. I'm going to call this the PDF conversion process timeline. And this timeline is only going to have one activity. And that activity is going to be the convert to PDF. So we'll go to our custom task here, and we'll go to the custom task tab, and we'll set up the convert to PDF. I'm just giving you a sense of how it will work. We're not going to be able to demo this because then I'd have to go back in and change the form, and I'd have to spend a lot of time doing the configuration. I'm just showing you a concept here, and it's applicable to other things, as we'll talk about in a second. But we're just going to add our convert to PDF there. And we are going to use the CT sample form as our parent form, but I'm just going to go ahead and close that. And I am going to go ahead and select those two checkboxes. I want to copy objects from this timeline back to the parent that called it. And I also want to copy all of the parent objects down to this timeline when it gets invoked, which should be the default behavior. We're just kind of belt and suspendering this thing, because I'm going to go back up here to my sample timeline. I'm going to go to my run process, and I'm now going to say, you know what process I want to run? I want to run the training webinar custom test. Well, it's going to make me go all the way into it, isn't it? I'm going to run the PDF conversion timeline. I don't really care about a new form. I don't need to worry about that all that much. All of my other things that I'm going to need to do, I would do, but I don't really have anything. All I really care about is ensuring that my form gets down to the process timeline, and also all of my documents get sent down there as well. So I'm just going to have the item type as all, the group name as all. Those are the defaults. So everything that I have in my parent process, I just want to shove it down into my child process and run my child process. So now that will invoke the child process as a sub-process of this. So I'm going to get to activity 1. They're going to hit submit. It's not going to invoke the PDF conversion. It's going to go to my next activity, which is activity 1. Activity 1 is now going to invoke the PDF conversion process timeline. And the only thing it does is that PDF conversion. I forgot to set one more thing, and that's that checkbox right there, because I don't want to have a whole bunch of copies of these PDFs hanging around. All I am doing is a PDF conversion. As soon as it gets done, all of the items that get converted are going to get thrown back up into the parent process timeline. So I don't need to keep a copy of this after it's done. I just need it to do my PDF conversion. Just as if I wanted to run it directly off of the form, or if I wanted to run it directly in the parent process timeline. What this enables me to do, though, is to run it asynchronously. I can invoke it. My parent process timeline just keeps moving on through the process. And for this complex and often lengthy custom task, it's just going to run in the background as a sub-process, because I've invoked it from the parent via the run process custom task. PDF conversion happens as a asynchronous sub-process. So it doesn't pause my parent process. So when I have the right value on my form, or however I'm going to make that PDF conversion happen, when I click the OK button on my form, or my approve button, or deny, whatever it may be, I'm just going to keep moving through my process. It's not going to keep my user stopped. And the only thing that's going to happen is it's going to kick off the PDF conversion timeline as an asynchronous sub-process. As soon as it's done, it's going to upload all of my PDF conversion items back up into the main process. And actually, that will really be the only thing that gets moved back up into the main process, because all of the other objects will be exactly the same. So basically, it'll take my PDF file, stick it back up onto the parent process, and then it will delete itself and it will be gone. But I have the converted PDF in my parent process just the way I want it to happen. This kind of model is also good to use for notifications. So let's say that I wanted to run a notification maybe a bunch of notifications. Uh, and I didn't want to do it on the main timeline. Um, well, I wouldn't do it on the timeline, but I'll tell you where I would do it. I would do it on the form because this comes up quite a bit where I need to notify somebody of something. And so on my form, I need a button. So we'll just drop a button here. And so there we go. Now I got my button. It will notify someone of something. Okay, cool. I will go into my button properties and I will just choose F and I will set a background color of 082F4D just for general purposes so that I have a nicely formatted button. But if I wanted to do a notification, and this does come up quite a lot, I need to notify users of something. I'm not assigning them tasks. That's already taken care of in the process timeline. I just need somebody to know something. I need to send them a notification. Okay, great. Then one of the ways to handle that, one of the easiest ways to handle that is to let's create our notification timeline. So we will create new process timeline. There it is. And we'll just call this ad hoc notifications. And there's a bunch of ways we can do this. It can get quite complex. We can have an array that has a whole list of people that we want to notify. We're not going to get that deep into it. All we're going to do on my ad hoc notifications timeline is we are just going to create a notify activity, and then we can go in and we can set up whatever notifications we want. So, when activity starts, I don't have any user I want to notify, so we'll just pick timeline initiator. Close that. Okay, great. I've got a notifications timeline. Now, obviously, it can be much more complex than that, like I said. But now I've got a notification thing. This often comes up in the context of a form. I need to make my form do a notification or a series of ad hoc notifications. Okay, cool. What we're going to do is we're going to go to custom task event mapping, and we will add once again, run process. Run process is way more useful than you think it is. We'll add that as a custom task. We will map that to button 3, and we will just launch our notification process. Ad hoc notifications is what it is called. And I guess if we wanted to, we could throw in all of our attachments. Usually those are timeline references. So we'll just attach them to the newly launched process. And presumably we have an email template that, attaches all of the attachments to it, etc. But that's all I need to do. So now I've got a button control on the form. Let me hit OK here. I think this will be faster if I run it from here. It is. There we go. Notify someone of something. Fine. I can click it and it launched the process. So I will receive a notification in due course as the timeline initiator that this process was launched. So I can just launch notifications from here. Now, this is not uncommon, and we get a lot of questions about this being sick a couple of weeks ago. has left me with this lingering cough, which comes back apparently telling me I've talked too long because my throat is getting dry. So I apologize for the state of my throat. In any event, as I was saying, we get this quite a lot. How do I just pop off these notifications? Being able to call the run process custom task from pretty much anywhere, and then just being able to make these, tiny little processes. PDF conversion does one thing. It does the PDF conversion custom task. The notification doesn't run a custom task. It just runs a notification activity, but it gets called via the run process custom task. So custom tasks are a convenient way, especially the run process custom task, for just doing quick little actions with tiny little sub processes where you can dependably rely that whatever happens in the parent process, whatever documents or forms are used there, will also be automatically attached to the child process if you need them. You can, as we did with the PDF conversion, perform your action, send the items back up to the parent, then delete themselves, or if it's, notifications, well, you can also do that there. This is also one thing that you should keep in mind. It's certainly a dangerous checkbox to click, but it's a super useful one when using the run process custom task to just launch a whole bunch of these tiny little one task sub processes. Because the nice thing about all these little one task sub processes is that they all happen asynchronously. They don't affect what goes on in your main process. Now, do keep in mind, if you check the remove timeline instance after process completes, that's exactly what it's going to do. So you're not going to be able to go back in the history and, like for in the case of this ad hoc notifications, you won't be able to go back and see when they all ran, because there won't be anything in the active or completed timelines, because they will have purged themselves. Every instance will purge itself after it is done. So keep that in mind. But for these little one-shot custom task invocations, it is pretty convenient to just be able to delete it whenever it's done, because you don't need it. It's not as important, I think, for the PDF conversion custom task. I think we're pretty good in being able to remove that timeline. There are some other considerations whenever we're invoking this custom task in a sub process. Those might be large documents, like if there's a bunch of TIFF files or whatever, or you're doing work with videos or pretty much any type of image. That's going to get big pretty fast, especially if you're calling it a lot. While it might be useful, if worse comes to worse, right, to be able to go into the, completed timelines node of your PDF conversion and, being able to search for a particular PDF conversion. Let's say that you lost it in your main timeline, the instance got deleted or whatever. It's kind of cool to have a backup that you can go back to and grab those items, I suppose, but you're paying a price for that because you're having to store 2 copies of all of these documents. And so your database is going to puff up like a tick. And that's not going to be a great thing. So being able to get rid of those, to have them self-delete themselves, is a great feature of being able to run those little timelines that just call a specific custom task or run a specific activity whenever you want them to, or whenever a user invokes an activity. It's kind of cool to be able to do all of those things. All right. Well, as you can see, my voice is getting kind of shot. Those were the main points I wanted to talk about custom tasks. We didn't really discuss a lot of configuration or stuff like that. Wasn't really our purpose today. It was just sort of a general overview on custom task usage. And so with that, I hope that was useful and that maybe you learned something today about different ways of doing things than you might have thought about in the past. For now, though, I think we're done. So have a great rest of your week, a great weekend. And we'll see you twice next week. Tuesday, we do have the Feature Spotlight webinar. So I've got a couple of things to talk about for that. And then, of course, our regular training webinar next Thursday. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. So long.